Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between the two Throne of Eldrain Planeswalker decks and the Defeated God Challenge deck from Journey into Nyx. We'll be playing two games, first on normal difficulty and then on hard mode, and we'll be playing using the three following hero cards. The first one is the Harvester, which says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. The Explorer, which says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. And the Vanquisher, which says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. And we will get started by drawing 8 cards apiece. Oko draws a forest, an island, Oko the Trickster, Beanstalk Giant, Frogify, Merrileaf Pixie, an island. It may not be a great hand, but it is a hand that we can use, so we will keep it. Rowan draws a plains, a mountain, a Rimrock Knight, a mountain, a plains, a Scorching Dragonfire, and a Windscarred Crag. This is a little bit too many lands for an aggressive deck, so we are going to use our free mulligan, because it's multiplayer, and send it back. Rowan draws a plains, a Garrison Griffin, a plains, a Rimrock Knight, a plains, a Rimrock Knight, and a mountain. It's not a great hand, but I think we're going to be keeping this one. Go ahead and get started by playing an island and a forest over here, and tapping them both to play a Merrileaf Pixie. This is a 2/2 fairy with flying, and you can tap it either green or blue. We'll play a mountain and a plains over here. We'll tap them both, and we'll play a Rimrock Knight. It's a 3/1 Dwarf Knight, and it can't block. And then we'll pass the turn to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Impulsive Charge. At the beginning of combat this turn, all revelers gain haste until end of turn and attack this combat if able. And the second one being a Serpent Dancers, which is a 2/4 human reveler with Death Touch, and when it leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card. All the revelers are going to get groovy and they're going to attack. We're going to block one of the Rollicking Throngs with the Merrileaf Pixie, and we will take a total of 4 damage from the remaining revelers to go down to 16. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Oko draws a forest, and we will discard Oko the Trickster. Rowan will draw a Weaselbeck Red Cap, and we will discard the Garrison Griffin. And then we'll untap. Oko draws a Garenbig Carver, and Rowan draws a Rowan's Battle Guard. We will play the 2 plains over here, and a forest, and an island over here. We're going to tap 3 mana over here, and cast the Beanstalk Giant's Adventure ability, which is Fertile Footsteps. It says sorcery, adventure, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Go ahead and grab a forest, put it onto the battlefield, shuffle. And then we will cast the Rowan's Battle Guard over here. This is a 3/3 human knight with first strike. As long as you control a Rowan Planeswalker, it gets +3/+0. And then we are going to attack with the Rimrock Knight into one of the Rollicking Throng. And we will tap 2 mana over here and cast the Garenbrig Carver's Shield's Might ability, which is an instant adventure. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, making the Rimrock Knight a 5/3, killing the Rollicking Throng. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will untap, cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Impulsive Charge. We've seen this before. And the second one being Xenagos' Strike. It deals 4 damage to each player. We're going to take 8 damage to go down to 8. And then we're going to be attacked by everybody. We're going to block each of the Rollicking Throngs with the 2 creatures we have. We'll take 2 damage from the Serpent Dancers to go down to 6. One of the Rollicking Throngs will die at the first strike of Rowan's Battle Guard. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Oko draws a forest, and we will discard the forest. Rowan draws a Youthful Knight, and we will discard the Garrison Griffin. And then we will untap. Oko draws a Bramblefort Fink, and Rowan draws a mountain. We'll play the mountain, we'll play the island. We will attack the Serpent Dancers with the Rowan's Battle Guard, and then we're going to tap 1 mana to use Rimrock Knight's ability here, which is Boulder Rush, instant adventure. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, making it a 5/3 first striker, killing the Serpent Dancers, and when it leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card. So Oko will draw a forest, and Rowan will draw a mountain. We'll play the mountain as our second land for the turn, and the forest as our second land for the turn here. And then we will tap everything over here except for the pixie to cast the Beanstalk Giant, which is a Star Giant, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control, making it a 7/7. Meanwhile, over here, we'll just go ahead and cast everything that we can, which is the Weaselback Red Cap, a 1/1 Goblin Knight, and for 1 in a red, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And the Youthful Knight, which is a 2/1 Human Knight with First Strike. And then we are going to pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will untap and cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Ecstatic Piper. It's a 2/2 Satyr Reveler, and when it enters the battlefield, Xenagos Ascended attacks its turn if able. When it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 2 life. And then we also have Dance of Panic. As long as 5 or more Revelers are on the battlefield, all Revelers have haste and attack each turn if able. It's an enchantment. We are going to be attacked by Xenagos, who is just going to bump into the Beanstalk Giant and do absolutely nothing. So we will untap. Oko will draw a Garenbrig Carver. Rowan will draw a Venerable Knight. And then we are going to go to combat. We are going to attack the Ecstatic Piper with the Youthful Knight and the Rollicking Throng with the Rowan's Battle Guard. That should kill them both, and we'll gain 2 life each to go get 4 life to take us up to 10. And then on the second main phase, we will spend 1 mana over here to cast the Venerable Knight. It's a 2/1 Human Knight, and when it dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target knight you control. We will spend 2 mana to cast the Bramblefort Fink, which is a 2/2 Oath, and for 8, it has base power and toughness 10/10 until end of turn. Activate this ability only if you control an Oko Planeswalker. And then we'll spend 4 more mana to cast the Garenbrig Carver from Exile. It's a 3/2 Human Warrior. And then we're going to pass the turn back to Xenagos. Xenagos will untap and cast the top 2 cards. The first one being Impulsive Destruction. Each player may sacrifice an artifact or enchantment. Impulsive Destruction deals 3 damage to each player who didn't sacrifice a permanent this way. We don't have any to sacrifice, so we're going to take 6 to go down to 4. And then we're going to cast Xenagos' Strike, which deals 4 damage to each player. That is 8 damage, and that actually kills us. Wow, we had the end in sight, and we lost. Well, that was easy mode. We're going to clean this up, and we'll be right back for hard mode. Alright, despite losing on normal difficulty, we're back for hard mode with 4 Rollicking Throngs. We'll draw 8 cards apiece. Oko draws a Charmed Sleep, a Fairy Vandal, Oko's Accomplices Force, Thornwood Falls, Island, Keeper of Fables. This is not a terrible hand, so we'll go ahead and keep it. Rowan draws an Acclaimed Contender, Plains, Scorching Dragonfire, Prize Griffin, Ardenvale Tactician, Knight of the Keep, and Rowan, Fearless Spark Mage. We do not have enough lands, so we're going to use our free mulligan and send this one back. Rowan draws an Ardenvale Tactician, Windscarred Crag, Plains, Rimrock Knight, Mountain, and Knight of the Keep. Not a great hand, but I think we can make use of it, so we'll go ahead and keep it. On our first turn, we'll play 2 blue mana over here. We'll tap them both and cast the Fairy Vandal over here, the 1/2 Fairy Rogue with Flash and Flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. And over here, we will play a Windscarred Crag, which enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. You can tap it for red or white, giving us 1 life, taking us up to 21. And then we will play a Plains, and we'll pass the turn to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first card is Impulsive Return. Return 2 cards named Ecstatic Piper from the graveyard to the battlefield. At the beginning of combat this turn, Impulsive Return deals damage to each player equal to the number of Revelers on the battlefield. There is no Ecstatic Piper to return, but we're still going to take damage. And then we have the Serpent Dancers. We've seen this before. There are 5 Revelers on the battlefield, so we'll take a total of 10 damage, taking us down to 11. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Oko draws a Keeper of Fables, and we will discard the Oko's Apprentices. Rowan draws a Plains, and we will discard the Plains. We'll untap. Oko draws a Thornwood Falls, and Rowan draws a Windscarred Crag. We're going to play a Thornwood Falls tapped over here, which enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield will gain 1 life, taking us up to 12. And you can tap to add green or blue, and then we will play a Forest as well. And over here we're going to play a Mountain and a Windscarred Crag tapped, giving us another life, taking us up to 13. And then we will tap these 3 and play Knight of the Keep, which is a 3/2 human knight. And over here, we're going to have these three. And we're going to play Charmed Sleep, which is an aura. Enchant creature. When Charmed Sleep enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature, and enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. We'll target Xenagos, so Xenagos is sleeping. And then we will, there's no point in attacking, there's not much else we can do, so we are going to pass the turn to Xenagos. Hopefully we don't die. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Dance of Panic. As long as 5 or more revelers are on the battlefield, all revelers have haste and attack each turn of Fable. There are 5. And then we also have an Ecstatic Piper. We're going to be attacked by everybody. We'll block one of the Rollicking Throngs with the Fairy Vandal. We'll block another Rollicking Throng with the Knight of the Keep, and we're going to be taking 6 damage to go down to 7. One of the Rollicking Throngs will die. And then we will use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Oko draws an island. We'll discard the Thornwood Falls. Rowan draws a Scorching Dragonfire, and we will discard the Mountain. Then we'll untap. Oko draws a Forest, and Rowan draws a Mountain. We'll play the Plains and the Mountain. And we'll play the Forest and the Island. And then we are going to tap 2 mana over here and cast Scorching Dragonfire. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. This will defeat the Ecstatic Piper, and when it leaves the battlefield, it is being exiled. Each player gains 2 life. We'll gain 4 life to go back up to 11. And then we are going to tap 5 mana and cast a Keeper of Fables. This is a 4/5 cat, and whenever one or more non-human creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, we'll draw a card. And then we are going to attack one of the Rollicking Throngs with the Fairy Vandal. And then we are going to tap 1 mana over here using the Rimrock Knight's ability, the Boulder Rush, which makes this a 3/2, which will defeat the Rollicking Throng, and that will cause the Keeper of Fables ability to trigger, drawing us a card. That gives us a Forest, and because we drew a second card this turn, the Fairy Vandal will gain a +1/+1 counter. And then we will have to pass the turn, because there's not much else we can do. We are going to untap Xenagos and cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Pharaoh's Band Revelers. It's a 4/4 Centaur Reveler. When it leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card. And we'll also cast another Serpent Dancers, which is the 2/4 Death Toucher. Now there are 5 assembled Revelers, so they are going to attack this turn. So before they come in on the attack, we're going to tap the Windscarred Crag for white and the Mountain for red. And we're going to use the adventure side of the Ardenvale Tactician, which is Dizzying Swoop. It's an instant. It says tap up to 2 target creatures. And then we're going to tap the 2 Serpent Dancers so they can't attack. And then the Pharaoh's Band Revelers and the 2 Rollicking Throngs will be attacking. We'll block one of the Rollicking Throngs with the Knight of the Keep, and the Pharaoh's Band Revelers with the Keeper of Fables. That will kill them both. We'll be able to draw a card off of the Pharaoh's Band Revelers. Oko draws Oko's Accomplices, and Rowan draws a Prize Griffin. Oh, and we take 1 damage from the remaining Rollicking Throng to go down to 10. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Oko draws an Oko's Hospitality, and we will discard Oko's Accomplices. Rowan draws a Windscarred Crag, and we'll discard that. And then we'll untap. Oko draws an Oko's Accomplices, and Rowan draws a Rowan's Battle Guard. We want to finish off those 2, but we don't really have a good way of doing it, except with that losing the Keeper. I guess that's okay to lose one of them, but I just wish I had some way of finishing the other one off. Alright, so we can lose 1 Keeper and we'll draw the cards off of the Serpent Dancers. So I think what we'll do is we'll attack the Rollicking Throng with the Knight of the Keep, and we'll attack one of the Serpent Dancers with the Keeper of Fables. This will kill them both, and then the Keeper will die, but because we dealt combat damage, we'll draw a card off of that. And then the Keeper dies. But because the Serpent Dancer died, we'll also draw a card each. Oko draws a Bramblefort Fink, and Rowan draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains over here, and then we'll play the Forest over here. So we'll play out the Keeper of Fables over here, and then with our remaining 2 mana, we will play out the Bramblefort Fink, which I think is the way that we get in for the win with this one. because we draw the second card, we'll get a counter on the Fairy Vandal. Then over here, we have 7 mana. I think we want to play out the Battle Guard because it's the most likely to be able to kill creatures, especially if we can draw a Rowan. And the first strike is excellent against the Xenagos' deck. And then we are going to pass the turn to Xenagos, who is going to cast the top 2 cards after untapping. We have a Faris Band Revelers, which you remember, and a Xenagos' Scorn. Xenagos' Ascendant gains trample until end of turn and attacks this turn if able. Xenagos cannot, so we're stopping here. And then we are going to use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Oko draws a Wildborn Preserver, which we like. We will pitch the Marrowleaf Pixie at this point, and Rowan draws a Scorching Dragonfire, which I think we're going to keep over the Prized Griffin, which is not doing much against what we have going on here from our opponents. And then we will untap. Oko draws a Forest. Rowan draws a Mountain. We can't take out Xenagos, so we're going to have to try to hold on somehow. But we can take out my opponent's creatures. So what we're going to do is we're going to attack the Faris Band Revelers with the Keeper of Fables. We're going to attack the Serpent Dancers with Rowan's Battle Guard. But we're going to cast the Scorching Dragonfire. We're going to target the Serpent Dancers so they already have 3 damage on it, which means the first strike of Rowan's Battle Guard will finish off the Serpent Dancers, and then the cat will beat the Faris Band Revelers. Both of them will die. We'll draw 2 cards apiece. Oko draws a Return of the Wild Speaker and a Island, and Rowan will draw a Rimrock Knight and a Youthful Knight. We'll go ahead and play the Mountain over here, and then we will play the Youthful Knight, which is the 2/1 Human Knight with first strike, and we'll tap the other 2 mana and play the Rimrock Knight out of exile. And as long as Xenagos doesn't have more creatures, we should be able to finish him off next turn. So this is now just a waiting game to see if we can get there. Oko will play the lands, and then we'll play the Wildborn Preserver for 2 mana. This is a 2/2 Elf Archer with Flash and Reach. Whenever another non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X +1/+1 counters on Wildborn Preserver. And then we can tap 3 mana to play the Oko's Accomplices, which are 2/3 fairies with flying, and then we'll tap the last 4 mana to put 4 +1/+1 counters on the Wildborn Preserver using its ability, making it a 6/6. And then we will pass the turn, who will cast the first 2 cards. We have Impulsive Return. We have 0 Ecstatic Pipers still in the graveyard, because the one that was there got exiled. And then he will also cast an Ecstatic Piper. We'll take 1 damage to each of us, taking us down to 8. Now there's an Ecstatic Piper, which we somehow have to get rid of. And that's it. We are going to use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Oko draws a Frogify, while Rowan draws an Acclaimed Contender. And then we will discard the Rimrock Knight, and we will discard the Frogify. We'll untap. Oko draws an Island, and Rowan draws a Plains. We don't really want these, so we're going to use the Harvester right now. Oko draws a Fairy Vandal, which is alright, and then Rowan draws an Inspiring Veteran. We'll discard the 2 lands. The Fairy Vandal causes a second draw on this turn, which will put another counter on to the existing Fairy Vandal. And then we just need to beat down my opponent's creatures and win, right? That's all we're trying to do here. We'll tap 3 mana over here and play the Acclaimed Contender. This is a 3/3 Human Knight when it enters the battlefield. If you control another knight, we do, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a knight or equipment or legendary artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. And we have Rowan's Battle Guard, Rowan, Fearless, Spark Mage, Garrison Griffin, and Plains. The only one that's compatible is the Battle Guard, so we'll take that and put that on hand. We'll shuffle these and stick them on the bottom. And then we have 5 mana left. I think we'll tap out and play the Inspiring Veteran as well as the Ardenvale Tactician from the board. Over here, we have a lot of mana, but I don't think we need to use anything yet. I think we're just going to finish off my opponent's creature with the Oko's Accomplices. That'll kill off the Ecstatic Piper, getting us 4 life, taking us back up to 12. putting us in a relatively safe spot. We don't have proper removal for my opponent's creature just yet, so we're going to hold on and wait until the end of my opponent's turn. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Impulsive Return. We have 1 Ecstatic Piper. Return it to the battlefield, and then we'll cast the second card, which is Dance of Flame. Whenever a Reveler attacks, Dance of Flame deals 1 damage to each player. We're not going to be attacked, and Xenagos can attack, so we'll take 2 damage again, taking us down to 10. And then we are going to, at the end of the turn, we'll spend 2 mana and cast a Fairy Vandal, which will come onto the battlefield. You've already seen it. We'll go ahead and tap everything else. That's 3, 6, 7, to put 7 more +1/+1 counters on the Wildborn Preserver, taking it up to a 13/13, and then we will untap. Oko draws an island, and Rowan draws a Rowan Stalwarts. We will attack the Ecstatic Piper with Oko's Accomplices again, killing the Ecstatic Piper. This will gain us 4 life to take us up to 14, and then we will draw a card off of that ability. That's a Charm Sleep, which we don't need anymore. We'll put a counter on this Fairy Vandal, making it a 5/6, and on this Fairy Vandal, making it a 2/3. And then we can't beat my opponent just yet. We'll go ahead and cast Rowan Stalwarts over here, which is a 5/2 human knight. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Rowan Fearless Sparkmage, reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. Go ahead and grab the Sparkmage, put it into our hand, sure, and shuffle. And then there's not a whole lot to do, so we're going to pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Xenagos' Strike, deals 4 damage to each player. That's 8 damage, taking us down to 6. The second one being an Ecstatic Piper. That is just that. And then we're going to end the turn. We'll use the Harvester. Oko draws a Bramblefort Fink, and Rowan draws a Windscarred Crag. We'll discard the Crag, and we'll discard the Charm Sleep. Also, at the end of the turn, as long as we're at it, we will tap 5 mana and cast Oko's Hospitality. It's an instant. Creature you control have base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. You may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Oko the Trickster, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. We'll go ahead and look for that. We'll put Oko the Trickster into our hand. We'll shuffle. And then we will untap. Oko draws a Forest. Rowan draws a Weapon Rack. We're still not really able to win here, but this is where we're at right now. We can play both of these lands, and we will spend 6 mana and cast Oko the Trickster. This is a 4 loyalty legendary Oko Planeswalker, and for +1 you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature you control. For 0 until end of turn, Oko the Trickster becomes a copy of target creature you control. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to him this turn, and -7 until end of turn. Each creature you control has base power and toughness 10/10. Go ahead and put the counters onto him, and immediately +1 him to take him up to 5 loyalty. Putting 2 +1/+ counters on the Keeper of Fables, I guess, making it a 6/7. Over here, I mean, we have all this mana. We'll go ahead and cast Rowan, Fearless Sparkmage. This is a 5 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Rowan, and for +1, up to 1 target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. -2, Rowan Fearless Sparkmage deals 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures can't block this turn. -9, gain control of all creatures until end of turn. Untap them, they gain haste until end of turn. Go ahead and +1 to give the Accomplices +3/+0 and first strike until end of turn, taking her up to 6 loyalty. And then we'll go ahead and attack with Accomplices into the Ecstatic Piper, which dies. We'll gain 4 life, going back up to 10. And we'll draw a card for Oko from the Keeper of Fables ability, which is a Beanstalk Giant. We have mana, so let's go ahead and spend 3 mana to cast the top half of the Beanstalk Giant, which is Fertile Footsteps. Go ahead and grab a Forest, put it onto the battlefield, shuffle. The remaining 2 mana here, cast another Bramblefort Fink. Use the last mana to put another counter on Wildborn Preserver. And then we're going to pass the turn to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Xenagos' Scorn. And then a Wild Mayonnaise, which is a 3/1 Human Reveler with first strike, and when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 3 life. Then in turn, we'll use the Harvester. Oko will draw an Oko's Hospitality and discard it. Rowan will draw a Plains and discard it. We'll untap. Oko draws an island, and Rowan draws a mountain. We'll play the mountain, but at this point, there's no real reason to put out a lot more because we're just going to crush my opponent at some point, just not soon, right? So we will go ahead and attack again with the large Fairy Vandal, and that will kill the Wild Mayonnaise. Beyond the first strike, we'll gain 6 life between the two of us to go up to 16 life. And then we can't defeat Oko just yet. We'll go ahead and play the Weapon Rack. I mean, why not? It is artifact. It enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. You can tap it to move a +1/+1 counter from Weapon Rack onto a target creature. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So we'll put this here. We'll put 3 counters on it. We'll tap it immediately to remove a counter from it and put a counter on the Inspiring Veteran, probably the most important of these cards. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos, who will cast the topmost card, which is a Ferris Band Revelers, and then another card, which is an Ecstatic Piper. There are 2 of these. There's not much that's going to be happening. We are going to end the turn by using the Harvester. Oko will draw an island and discard the island. Rowan will draw an Ardenvale Tactician and discard the Tactician. We'll untap. Oko draws a Tome Raider, and Rowan draws a Plains. We will, again, there's no reason to play anything else out. We'll go ahead and +1 Oko here and put 2 more counters on the Fairy Vandal here, I guess. And we'll +1 Rowan to 7 so that the accomplices are +3/+0 in first strike, and attack this into the Ferris Band Revelers. We'll attack the Youthful Knight into the Ecstatic Piper. This will defeat them both. We'll gain 4 life and draw a card each, taking us back up to 20. Oko draws a Truenvale Treefolk, and Rowan draws a Plains. The second card will put additional counters on both of the Fairy Vandals. And then I think we're just going to pass the turn. There's no reason to play anything else out right now, because we just have the board. So Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first is an Ecstatic Piper. The second is another Ecstatic Piper. That's not doing anything right now, and so we will pass back to ourselves and untap. At this point, I'm kind of concerned that we're going to deck ourselves before we can win. Oko draws a Forest, and Rowan draws a Scorching Dragonfire. Not quite what we need, but we're going to keep on going. We'll go ahead and play a Forest and an island at this point here. And we'll play both the Plains over here. There's no reason to hold back. We're just waiting to win. We'll +1 Oko here to 7. Put 2 counters onto the Oko's accomplices, and +1 here to make the Rimrock Knight a 6/1 first striker. We'll attack with the Rimrock Knight and the Oko's accomplices to kill both the Ecstatic Pipers, getting us 8 life, taking us up to 28. Oh, we'll draw a card for Oko, which will be a Forest. That's your second card. That'll put another counter on each of the Fairy Vandals, and then it'll be Xenagos' turn, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Madden Oread. It's a 4/2 enchantment Nymph Reveler. As long as there are 5 or more Revelers on the battlefield, Madden Oread attacks each turn if able, and when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 3 life. We also have Xenagos' Strike, which deals 4 damage to each player. There's 2 of us. We'll take 8 damage, taking us down to 20 again. This time, I think we finally have it. At the end of Xenagos' turn, we're going to tap 2 mana and cast Scorching Dragonfire, targeting Madden Oread, destroying it and exiling it. That'll get us 6 life, taking us back up to 26. And then we will untap. We'll draw. Oko draws a Garenbraid Carver, and Rowan draws a Mountain. And with Xenagos now able to be killed, we'll go ahead and +1 Rowan to give Rowan Stalwarts +3/+0 in first strike, making them an 8/2 first striker, attacking them into Xenagos and defeating Xenagos for the win. And that ends hard mode. We managed to defeat Xenagos on hard mode, even though not on normal mode, which is a bit of a surprise, but that is a sometimes very explosive deck. Let me know what your thoughts were on the games in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.